ostende nobis Domine misericordiam Tuam. Domine exaudi orationem meam. Dominus vobiscum. Oremus, exaudi nos Domine Sancte Pater omnipotens et Deus, et mitere dinieris sanctum angelum tuum de celis, qui custodiat, foveat, protegat, visitet atque defendat omnes habitantes in hoc habitaculum, per Christum Dominum nostrum.
confiscamus peccata nostra, ut aptisimus ad sacra mysteria celebrare. Confite, Deo omnipotent, et vobis fratres, qui et peccavi nimis, cogitatione, verbo, opere et omissione. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. Ideo greco beata Mariam semper Virgine, via mes angelos et sanctos, et vos fratres, orare a me et Dominum Deum. Miseriatur nostri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis peccatis nostris, perducat nos a vitam aeternam.
Oremus. Da nobis quesimus Dominus Deus nostrum, in tua semper devotione gaudere, quia perpetua est plena felicitas, si bonorum omnium iudica serviamus auctorium, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium Tuum, qui tecum vivit et regnat, in unitate Spiritus Sancti, Deus per omnia saecula saeculorum.
A reading from the book of Proverbs. A perfect wife, who can find her? She is far beyond the price of pearls. Her husband's heart has confidence in her. From her he will derive no little profit. Advantage and not hurt she brings him all the days of her life. She is always busy with wool and with flax. She does her work with eager hands. She sets her hands to the distaff, her fingers grasp the spindle. She holds out her hand to the poor, she opens her arms to the needy. Charm is deceitful and beauty empty. The woman who is wise is the one to praise. Give her a share in what her hands have worked for, and let her works tell her praises at the city gates. The word of the Lord.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Thessalonians. You will not be expecting us to write anything to you, brothers, about times and seasons, since you know very well that the day of the Lord is going to come like a thief in the night. It is when people are saying how quiet and peaceful it is that the worst suddenly happens, as suddenly as labor pains come on a pregnant woman, and there will be no way for anybody to evade it. But it is not as if you live in the dark, my brothers, for that day to overtake you like a thief. No, you are all sons of light and sons of the day. We do not belong to the night or to darkness, so we should not go on sleeping as everyone else does, but stay wide awake and sober. The word of the Lord.
Dominus vobiscum. Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Matteum. At that time, Jesus spoke this parable to his disciples. The kingdom of heaven is like a man on his way abroad who summoned his disciples and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to a third 1, each in proportion to his ability. Then he set out. The man who had received the 5 talents promptly went and traded with them and made 5 more. The man who had received 2 made 2 more in the same way. But the man who had received 1 went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now a long time after, the master of those servants came back and went through his accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more. "Sir," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 talents. Here 5 more that I have made." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have shown you can be faithful in small things. I will trust you with greater. Come and join in your master's happiness." Next, the man with 2 talents came forward. "Sir," he said, "you entrusted me with 2 talents. Here are 2 more that I have made." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have shown you can be faithful in small things. I will trust you with greater. Come and join in your master's happiness." Last came forward the man who had 1 talent. "Sir," he said, "I had heard you were a hard man, reaping where you had not sown and gathering where you have not scattered. So I was afraid, and I went off and hid your talent in the ground. Here it is, it was yours, you have it back." But his master answered him, "You wicked and lazy servant, so you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather what I have not scattered? Well then, you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have recovered my capital with interest. So now, take the talent from him and give it to the man who has the 5 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough. But from the man who has not, even what he has will be taken away. As for this good-for-nothing servant, throw him out into the dark, where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth." Verbum Domini.
Today's gospel ends with a devastating and surprising moral lesson. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough. But from the man who has not, even what he has will be taken away. The standard reading of this story in thousands of homilies and sermons is that the talents symbolize gifts and abilities that God has given us, and that he expects us to spend generously or invest wisely. This interpretation is supported by the fairly circular argument for the relationship between talent in the ancient biblical sense of the term and talent in ordinary English today. But there is more to this parable than just a lesson in using your ability to sing or to write or to play the flute. A talent in ancient times was a measure of something particularly weighty, usually silver or gold. A single talent might represent something like 60 kilograms of precious metal, and as such was not something you could just carry around in your pocket. It was more like the most you could carry on your back, and in monetary terms was about 16 years' wages for an ordinary laborer. A talent of something was therefore very valuable and very heavy. What we today likely miss, and what the Jews of Christ's day would have caught immediately, is the connection to heaviness. A talent was heavy, and 5 talents was massively heavy. Heaviness is the root of the word used in Hebrew to refer to the glory of the Almighty, the kavod of God. In Greek, it is doxa, and in Latin, it is gloria, both of which carry the connotation of shining light. But the basic sense of the Hebrew word is heaviness. You could say gravitas. And this kavod of the Lord's was to be found in the Jerusalem temple on the mercy seat within the Holy of Holies. Therefore, what was heaviest, what was most glorious of all, was the presence, the power, the life, the glory, and the mercy of the Almighty. Read in this way, Christ's parable becomes a lesson about what is most precious and what we do with it. The talents given to the 3 servants are not monetary gifts or personal capacities and abilities. They are a share in the very life and power of God, a participation in the weightiness of his love and mercy. But since mercy and love are always directed outwards towards another, the talents given are meant to be shared. In fact, they will increase precisely in the measure that they are given away. The problem with the timid servant who buried his talent is not that he was a bad investment banker, but that he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of what he had been given. The divine life, God's love, received as a free gift, is meant to be given to others as a free gift. Buried in the ground, hugged tightly to oneself as one's own possession, such a talent is necessarily lost. It rusts and decays and diminishes until very little of it remains. And this is why the Master's seemingly harsh words should not be read as the punishment of an angry God, but as an expression of the laws of spiritual physics. The treasure we have been given, the good news of Christ, God's love and life and our salvation, will grow in us only inasmuch as we give it to others. To have the glory of God is precisely not to have it in the ordinary sense of the word. What good is the good news if we keep it to ourselves? Christ's message, the gospel of compassion, of mercy, of justice, of hope, of the glory and freedom of the children of God, is meant to be lived and shared with others. And it may be that we are too frightened of what that might involve. Again and again we hear in the Gospels the simple words, "Do not be afraid." In this parable, we see the consequences of being afraid, but the call to live the gospel is a call, in fact, to be fearless. It's important to note where this passage appears in St. Matthew's Gospel. It's the final parable before the Passion. It's Christ's last lesson. As the Master gave talents to his servants before leaving on his journey, Christ gives this one last parable to his disciples because he is going on a journey to the cross to give himself for them and to them, and he's going to leave them with his gospel and his work. Our Lord is pointing towards the last chapter of his earthly life and really the last chapter of ours. And his final advice is to use what he has given us and to make it grow in ourselves and in the world. All this month, we have been reminded of the finality, the limits of this earthly life. We began November by honoring all the saints and then praying for all souls. We have said Mass for the departed fathers of the oratory, and we have prayed for the souls of those lost in war. Every week during this month, we say Requiem Masses for all whose names are in our November dead list. Today's Gospel looks at the sum of our life's work and asks, what have you done with the time you have had? What have you done with the gift, the greatest of gifts you have been given by God in Christ? It stands as a challenge to us, a call to live with purpose, to know and to value and to use what we have been given, to give what we have been given, because there will be a reckoning. We will have to give an account. But not an account of how we have used our skills and our abilities, but rather how we have spread God's love by showing that love, how we have increased our share in the glory and life of God by sharing it with others, how we have grown the treasure that is the good news by giving it away. The more we spread and show and share, the more we will have to return to the Father. If we fear losing anything, we will lose everything. But the more we give, the bigger will be our share. And then at our own reckoning, please God, we will hear the Lord say to us too, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and share in your Master's joy."
sacrificium acceptabile fiat, apud Deum Patrum omnipotens.
Suscipia Dominus sacrificium de manibus tuis, ad laudem et gloriam nomini sui, ad utilitatem quoque nostrum, totius per ecclesiae sue sancti. Concede quesimus Domine, ut oculis tui maestatis munus oblatum, et gratia nobis devotionis obteniat, et effectum beate perenitatis acquirat, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Dominus vobiscum. Sursum coda. Gratias agamus Domino Deo nostro. Vere dignum et justum est, ecum et salutare. Nos tibi semper et ubique gratias agere. Domine Sancte Pater omnipotens aeterne Deus, per Christum Dominum nostrum, qui humanis miseratus erroribus, de Virgine nascidignatus est, qui crucem passus a perpetua morte nos liberavit, et a mortuis resurgens vitam nobis donavit aeterna. Et ideo, cum angelis et archangelis, cum tronis et dominationibus, cumque omni militia celestis exercitus, hymnum gloriae Tuae canimus, sine fine dicentes.
Te igitur clementissime Pater, per Iesum Christum filium Tuum Dominum nostrum, supplices rogamus ac petimus, uti accepta habeas et benedicas, hec dona, hec munera, hec sancta sacrificia illibata. In primis que tibi offerimus pro ecclesia tua sancta catholica, quam pacificare, custodire, adunare et reggere digneris toto orbe terrarum, una cum famulo tuo Papa nostro Francisco, et antistite nostro Bernardo, et omnibus orthodoxis atque catholice et apostolice fidei cultoribus. Memento Domine, famalorum famalorumque tuarum. Et omnium circumstantium, quorum tibi fides cognita est nota devotio, pro quibus tibi offerimus, vel qui tibi offerent hoc sacrificium laudis, pro se suisque omnibus, pro redemptione animarum suarum, pro spe salutis et incolumnitatis suae, tibique redunt vota sua aeterno Deo vivo et vero. Communicantes et memoriam venerantes, in primis gloriosis semper Virginis Mariae, genitricis Dei et Domini nostri Iesu Christi, sed et beati Iosef et Justem Virginis sponsi, et beatorum apostolorum ac martyrum tuorum, Petri et Pauli, Andrei, Jacobi, Ioannis, Tome, Jacobi, Philippi, Bartolomei, Mattei, Simonis et Tadei, Lini, Cleti, Clementi, Sisti, Cornelii, Cipriani, Lorenzii, Chrysogoni, Ioannis et Pauli, Cosme et Damiani, et omnium sanctorum tuorum, quorum meritis precibusque concedas, ut in omnibus protectionis Tuae muniamur auxilio, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Angigitur oblationem servitutis nostrae, sed et cuncte familiae Tuae, quesumus Domine, ut placatus accipias, diesque nostros in Tua pace disponas, atque ab aeterna damnatione nos eripi, et in electorum Tuorum iubias grege numerari, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Quam oblationem Tu Deus, in omnibus quesumus, benedictam, adscriptam, oratam, rationabilem acceptabilemque facere dinieris, ut nobis corpus et sanguis fiat dilectissimi Filii Tui, Domini nostri, Iesu Christi, qui pridie quam pateretur. Accepit panem in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, et elevatis oculis in celum, a Te Deum Patrem suum omnipotentem, tibi gratias agens, benedixit, fregit, deditque discipulis suis dicens, accipite et manducate ex hoc omnes. Hoc est enim corpus meum, quod pro vobis tradetur. Simili modo, postquam cenatum est, accipiens et hunc preclarum calicem, in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, item tibi gratias agens, benedixit, deditque discipulis suis dicens, accipite et bibite ex eo omnes. Hic est enim calix sanguinis mei, novi et aeterni testamenti, qui pro vobis et pro multis effundetur in remissionem peccatorum. Hoc facite in meam commemorationem. Mysterium Fidei. Et memores Domine nos servitui, sed et plebs tua sancta, e justem Christi Filii Tui Domini nostri, tam beate passionis, nec non et ab inferis resurrectionis, sed et in celos gloriose ascensionis, offerimus preclari maiestati Tue, de Tuis donis ac datis, ostiam puram, ostiam sanctam, ostiam immaculatam, panem sanctum vitae aeterne, et calicem salutis perpetui, supraque propitio axere novulto respicere dinieris, et accepta haberi sicuti accepta haberi dignatus est, munere puri tu justi Abel, et sacrificium patriarchae nostre Abrahe, et quod tibi obtulit summus sacerdos tuus Melchizedec, sanctum sacrificium immaculatum hostiam. Supplices te rogamus omnipotens Deus, iubi hec perferi per manus sancti angeli tui in sublime altare tuum, in conspecto divinae majestatis tuae, ut quod ex hac altaris participatione, sacrosanctum filii tui corpus et sanguinum sum serimus, omne benedictione celesti et gratia repliamur, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Memento etiam Domine famulorumque tuarum, qui nos preceserunt cum signo fidei, et dormiunt in somno pacis. Ipsis Domine et omnibus in Christo quiescentibus, locum refrigerii lucis et pacis, ut indulgias deprecamur, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Nobis quoque peccatoribus familis tuis de multitudine miserationem tuarum sperantibus, partem aliquam et societatem donari dinieris, cum tuis sanctis apostolis et martiribus, cum Ioanne, Stefano, Mattia, Barnaba, Ignatio, Alexandro, Marcellino, Petro, Felicitate perpetua, Agata, Lucia, Agnete, Cecilia, Anastasia, et omnibus sanctis tuis, inter quorum nos consortium non estimatur meriti, sed venie quesimus largitur admite, per Christum Dominum nostrum, per quem hec omnia Domine semper bona creas, sanctificas, vivificas, benedicis, et prestas nobis.
Per ipsum et cum ipso et in ipso, est tibi Deo Patri omnipotenti, in unitate Spiritus Sancti, omnis honor et gloria, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Preceptis salutaribus moniti, et divina institutione formati, audemus dicere. Libera nos quesimus Domine ab omnibus malis, da propitius pacem in diebus nostris, ut ope misericordiae Tue adiuti, et a peccato simus semper liberi, et ab omni perturbatione securi, expectantes beatam spem, et adventum Salvatoris nostri, Iesu Christi. Domine Iesu Christe, quid existi apostolis Tuis, pacem relinquo vobis, pacem meam do vobis, ne respicias peccata nostra, sed fidem ecclesiae Tue, eamque secundum voluntatem Tuam, pacificare et coadunare dinieris, qui vivis et regnas in saecula saeculorum.
Pax Domini sit semper vobiscum. Ecce agnus Dei, ecce qui tollit peccatum mui, beati qui ad cenum agni vocatis sum. Domine non sum Deus, subjectum mea, sed tantum de quo, sabitur anima. Oremus. Sumsimus Domine sacri doni mysteri, humilitade cantus,
Utque in sui commemoratione nos filius tuus facere precepi, in nostre proficiant caritatis augmentum, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Dominus vobiscum. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.